Okay, guys, welcome to the course. We're going to start off just getting to know where the interface is and where things are, just to get a start with Illustrator. So the first thing we're going to do whenever we start with Illustrator is we're going to reset our workspace. So this is how we get started. You'll be greeted with a screen that looks like this. And the first thing you're going to do once you open Illustrator is go new file. And for now, you can choose any of these selections, but let's for now go art and illustration. And we're going to pick this guy, the 1280 by 1024. Okay, you'll see that updates here. Okay, it gives us our details. And for now, let's just go create. What we're going to do here is just set everything up so that when you're looking at your screen and I'm looking at my screen, I'm talking about an area on the screen, yours looks the same as mine. Okay, and I always do this before every video. We go up here and we click on this workspace icon and we select essentials, and we're also going to go down and reset essentials, which will set everything back. So let's say, for instance, I've moved some things around and I changed the way things look, and I'm telling you to go to the layers tab or the brushes tab, and I've got that somewhere, and you're looking for it because you can't find it. The way that we make sure that everything looks the same as we reset it, now things are back where you would expect them to be based on the videos. Okay, so that's called resetting your workspace. You can also do that by going Window, Workspace, and then you've got the same drop down as the one in the corner there. We go Essentials and reset every time. Okay, to open a new file, we're just going to go File, New, okay? Or if you're trying to open a file that you worked on previously, File, Open. Okay, in this case, we're working on a new file, and that's what we've got here. We haven't named it yet, so it gives it title Untitled. We'll name it at the end of the lesson. Okay, so you saw me moving things around here, these little boxes, okay? These are called palettes. It's an important name, and we think of them like, almost like an artist would have palettes, right? The tools that they're using are important for what they're making, same with ours. And so whatever it is we're doing, we can take these things and we can customize our layout to make the palettes that we use more often available. And you can see there are a lot of different kind of options here, depending on what kind of thing I'm doing. And as I say, these can get customized to the kind of layout that you like, and you can see that you have sort of some options about where you can put things. Okay, anytime it turns blue, that gives you the kind of docking option, and we call, you just heard me say docking, we call this docking. So if you think of like a boat which is floating, okay, by itself, when we bring it back to land, we dock it, and so that's this right here. Okay, all right, just so that everything looks the way it should, we're going to reset, and now we're back to normal. Okay, the other thing I want to mention is that this white area is called your artboard. Okay, now you can make multiple artboards, but we're only going to start with one. Okay, and so what you can see is we've got this kind of white area, which is where you're working the artboard, and then outside of it, you've got kind of a gray area. Okay, if I change to the hand tool, which is H on my keyboard, you can see that I can move this around. Okay, and say I'm working with some graphics and I don't need them right now, I can put them over here. Okay, so say I've got some shape and I don't actually need it, I can drag it over here and leave it there for now. Okay, so that's the kind of the interface, kind of what you're looking at, tools and palettes and artboard. The last thing we'll mention here is there's a toolbar, and we'll be going through these one at a time, kind of learning what each of these tools do and what other tools are related to each of the sort of main tool sets. Okay, oops. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep each of these videos under 10 minutes, just so that we can keep things tight and keep things moving. So the first thing we're going to work on today is just navigating around the workspace. So you saw me change, to the hand tool, okay, which is here. Whenever you're using any tool, okay, so let's say I'm using this tool here, if you don't want to switch to the hand tool and then have to go back to the tool you're using, you can press the space bar and it will temporarily change to the hand tool. Okay, so if you're zoomed in on something and you're working kind of in detail here and you want to move over, you can do that without changing your tool. Okay, that's a shortcut. There's a lot of keyboard shortcuts in Illustrator, and we'll be learning them and then reviewing them at the end of each lesson. Also, when you're navigating the workspace, you can zoom in and out. Okay, there is a magnifying or a zoom tool here. Okay, and there are a couple ways to use that. You can click and zoom in, field option, you can zoom out. Okay, and there's me using the hand tool, okay, to recenter. You can hit Command minus to also zoom out, or Command plus on your keyboard to zoom in, or you can set your sizes by hitting Command 0 will go to fit your screen, Command 1 will go to 100%. And you can actually see up here and down here in the bottom left corner what size you're at, what scale you're at. Okay, so that's 50%, 25%, and to get back to fitting your screen, Command 0 will depend on the size of your screen and the window you're working in. Okay, so now we have a sense of how to navigate around the workspace. Let's start looking at some of the tools that we can work with. So to start off, we're going to just to learn, navigating these tools, we're going to use the rectangle tool. And you'll see that when you cursor over any of these, mouse over any of these tools, you get a little pop-up by default that shows you kind of what the tool does. And it also shows you here the keyboard shortcut. Okay, so this one is M. For example, this here, the pen tool is P, and a pretty common one to flip back to is the selection tool, which is V. Okay, so you're going to flip over to this tool by either clicking on the rectangle or hitting M on your keyboard, and it'll change to that tool. So before we draw anything here, you can see, we're going to take a quick look down at this section here. You can see there's two boxes here. Okay, there's a white box, which seems to be in front of this sort of black kind of outlined box. These are called the fill and the stroke. Okay, and fill and stroke are defining what the colors are for the box that you're going to create in this case, because we're using the rectangle tool. So I'm going to make a box here, and you'll see that it has the properties based on what are set here, white and black. Okay, we've got a white fill. It's hard to tell that this is white because it's on a white background, but you'll see that it is in fact white, and it's got a black stroke around the outside. You might be seeing on your screen that there's like a blue tinge to it. We'll talk about that in a minute, but if I click away from it, you can see that that disappears. Okay, when something is selected, we get that. I can also change the properties. So right now I've got this selected. I can double click. There's a number of ways to do everything in Illustrator. So one of the ways that I like to work is if I'm changing colors, I can double click on this color picker, and because white is in front, which is the fill, I'm going to affect the fill color. So if I choose from the color family, whichever, if I'm looking for like a sky blue, I'm going to pick my family and then choose how light or dark I want that color to be. Okay, and when I'm happy with what's in that circle here, I hit OK, and it updates my fill color. I'm going to click away just to show you. We haven't changed the outline because you'll notice that that little black outline hasn't changed. I'm going to click, instead of clicking on this, I'm going to click on the little black outline box. Okay, and I double click, and you'll notice that that moved to the front. And again, I can change this. Oh, I need to have it selected. Hold on. Let's select this box. Okay, and I'm going to change this to a different color. And you can see that by changing the selection here and the family that I'm using, it updates sort of in real time here. Okay. Another way to do that, and there are many, is when you double click this palette, the color palette shows up. Okay, this guy right here, and you can just select right out of there. And depending on which of these is in front, it will update either the stroke or the fill. Another way to do the same thing is over here on the properties tab. Okay, the properties tab is right here. Okay, and I'm bring it back over here, and you can see I've got fill and stroke colors here. So I can either click on any of these, what are called swatches. Okay, we've got swatches here, or alternatively, I can click down here on the stroke and pick a stroke I want. You'll also notice next to this stroke, you've got something called the width. Okay, this is your stroke width, and I can either, while I've got it selected here, it's quite thin, hard to see. I'm going to bump this up. Okay, and you can see I'm making that bigger. Okay, you can also, if you want, just put in any value with your keyboard, and that'll give you a pixel width, a stroke width based on what you set. Okay, and that is no matter what you've got selected, you can make these types of changes. Okay, these are playing with properties. Okay, all right. So a reminder that that's called fill and stroke. Those are pretty important terms. You'll notice that I've now changed these. If I want to set these back to black and white, okay, I can either click on this little icon here, okay, which will set them back, or if I hit D, which you can see the pop up there, the little tooltip tells you that default fill and stroke are a keyboard shortcut of D. So I just hit D on my keyboard, it sets these back to black and white. Because I had this selected, it applied those changes. So I'm going to go undo, Command Z on a Mac. Okay, if I select away from this and then change it, it won't affect it. So it depends if you've got things selected or not. Okay, I mentioned that we would talk about the selection tool. Okay, this is the selection tool, and it's V on your keyboard. And what that means is I'm selecting, you probably figured this out, I'm selecting and deselecting objects. And so as I do that, when I click here, you can see that this changes to give me the properties of the thing that's selected. If I click away and click on the artboard, you'll see it's giving me details about the artboard. If I make a different selection here, let's make an ellipse. Okay, and to get that, this little triangle here, sorry, cancel that. This little triangle here will give me what's called the flyout menu. So you just click and hold, and you'll get kind of related tools. I'm going to make an ellipse tool. I've got the same color set here, so I'm going to actually change them just so we can make it easier to talk about. And I'm going to make that a different color as well. Okay, and then I'm going to make my ellipse because my ellipse tool is selected. Okay, there's my ellipse. Okay, and now back to my selection tool, I click off to select nothing, and I select whichever one I want to make changes to or move or whatever I want to do with that object. You'll also see that I mentioned this little blue box. It's called either a gizmo or a control box, and you can make things bigger or smaller. You can scale them up. Okay, you can change the proportions. You can also rotate. Okay, some of the things that you can do with respect to this is also there are a number of modifier keys, which means holding your keyboard and making changes. So as I change this, you can see I'm changing both the height and width. If I want to, I can hold Shift, and that will constrain my ratio so that it's going to change evenly in both the horizontal and the vertical size. Okay, same thing here. Okay, making that bigger or smaller, and holding Shift locks the proportions so that it stays in the same proportion as it was. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is you'll see when I select on objects, if I right click using my mouse, I'll get what's called a contextual menu, and that gives me kind of some options based on the thing that I'm doing. Okay, so if I have the option to arrange things in order, right, I can do that by right clicking on the object. Okay, if I right click here, I'll get some different tools. If I'm using the brush tool, I might get some different tools, some different objects again. Like that's a different menu than the one that I get when I click here. Okay, that is called the contextual menu. The main menu, which is up here, gives us all of the tools that are available, and obviously there's lots here, and we'll cover these as we move forward. Okay, the last thing I want to show is the color picker. So you'll notice that I've got some properties here, and I've got some properties here. I'm going to change this one to 20 just to make them different. And so I've got a purple and a kind of a darker purple stroke, and I've got a 20 pixel stroke on this circle. If I select this guy right here, and I go over to the eyedropper, okay, which is I on the keyboard, and I click this. Oh, let me get it selected. I click on this, I hit I, and I click this. It applies that information, okay, those properties to the object that I had selected. Okay, and that's going to be it for this lesson. Just a kind of a quick and dirty kind of learning where things are and how to get started. We covered things like how to open a file, okay, Command N or File New. We talked about opening files, which would be Command O for open, and you can see the keyboard shortcuts are here. We're going to close this file by hitting Command W. Okay, that'll be Command W. Whether you're saving or not, we won't save this for now. And then we covered things like zooming in and out using Command plus, Command minus, Command 0, and Command 1. And finally, we looked at the spacebar as a temporary way to change over to our hand tool. Okay, that's our intro, and we'll see you in the next video where we start to talk about more specifics with layers, stacking order, and some tools. Okay, bye.